Alright, shall we start? 皆さんこんにちは、アリーです。Hi everyone, my name is Ali, and this is all the language study I did in 2023. Alright, let me put my glasses on, and here we go. Right, 2023 was kind of a weird year for me. I had a lot going on this year, so not everything went according to plan. I'm just saying it right off the bat. Just to mention a few things, I quit my corporate job in September. I traveled around Japan for like the whole month of October. And last but not least, I sat the JLPT N1 in July this year, so the Japanese language proficiency test. And I must say that this was a very tiring event for me. So after sitting the exam, I did take a full study break. So if I were to recap my year, I can clearly distinguish the periods in which I studied a lot and the periods in which I took a break from studying, actually. So therefore, the year for me was kind of eventful, to say the least. So I did what I could with my language study, which was still my number one personal project. But I wasn't able to complete all of my goals. The goals I had set for my language study back in January 2023. There were 3 languages I wanted to focus on this year: Japanese at advanced level, Mandarin Chinese at upper beginner level, and Russian at beginner level. So now let's take a look at each one by one. Alright, so here were my language goals for the year, and we're gonna start with Japanese. For Japanese, I wanted to upgrade my vocab this year, which I did, and mostly through my preparation for the N1 exam. I wanted to finish studying with N1 study materials. I have purchased more N1 study materials than the ones I finished this year before sitting the exam, but now I'm working my way through them. I still have a few more to cover. Get the N1, I did reach this goal. Read a lot, I also did reach this goal. Perfect my kanji. I haven't done as much kanji preparation and kanji practice as I would have liked, but I'm working on it, so it's a half accomplishment. Start an activity in Japanese. I haven't reached that goal. Improve my speaking. I did improve my speaking ability, but not as much as I would have liked, so this is a half accomplished goal. Write a full story in Japanese and get it corrected. I haven't reached that goal. Learn a new skill in Japanese or connect it to Japanese. In a way, I did. I have studied a lot about psychology and coaching this year in Japanese. In a way, you can say that these are new skills of mine, and I became much more knowledgeable about these 2 subjects this year. So it's a half accomplished goal. So for Japanese, I'd say I did pretty well with my goals, except with the specific ones. The big event of my year was really to sit and pass the JLPT N1. In fact, you can hear me talk about my experience in this video right here, and you can also witness my reaction to the results in this vlog right here. So I did do a lot of Japanese studying during the year, but from my perspective, the year was clearly cut into 2 parts: the period before sitting the N1 and the remaining part of the year. And you know what, from now on, I propose to start calling these periods BN1 and AN1. BN1 for before sitting the N1 exam, and AN1 for ante N1 after sitting the N1 exam. I can clearly see a difference between these 2 periods. Really was such a big event in my language study life that it feels like, there was a before and an after, really. So how did I study Japanese this year? So of course, during the BN1 period, I focused most of my energy on preparing the JLPT. But because my preparation for this exam had actually started more than a year prior to that, because I had actually started N1 studying, like N1 material studying, back at the end of 2021, it was more than a year preparation before actually starting 2023. And I knew at the beginning of the year that I would register for the July exam, but I of course did not expect to get the exam on the first try in July, so I was prepared to also sit the December session of the exam. It turned out that I got the exam on first try, but it was such a hard exam and there was such a low probability of that occurring that I was really surprised to get it on first try. So anyway, I was really prepared to at least sit it twice during the year. But anyway, even though I had done a lot of preparation back in 2021 and 2022, I still had the final preparations to do to get ready for the exam. To do that, I studied mostly with textbooks, which were focused on the N1, preparation books with exercises dedicated to the N1 as well, and of course mock exams right before sitting the exam. But I also immersed a lot this year, a lot more than previous years, I think. So for listening, during the BN1 period, I focused on listening materials that would help me prepare the listening section of the JLPT, like the Newspeaks channel, for example. And during the AN1 period, I went back to channels like YouTube Daigaku to focus on subjects that personally interest me a lot, like world history, for instance. For reading, 2023 was the year I read the most in Japanese. And I also finally reached the landmark of 100 books read in Japanese. The best resource that I will single out this year is not a textbook and is not an immersion resource either. It is actually the Migi app, the Migi JLPT app. It is an app that contains lots of exercises for each section of the JLPT, also contains digital mock exams for the JLPT, and if I hadn't found it, I am not sure I would have passed the JLPT on first try. So there you have it for Japanese. Of course, because this is my main language, I will talk a lot more about it. Since today we are also covering my 2 other languages, I don't want to drag this on for too long, so we'll stop here for today for Japanese. Alright, moving on to Mandarin Chinese. For Chinese, I had 8 goals. I wanted to finish the Duolingo course. I did not finish the Duolingo course. In fact, I stopped using Duolingo for now because it was starting to get a bit annoying. They changed up the app a lot. They added new functionalities and stuff, and I don't know, it was just starting to get a bit annoying. Maybe I will talk about it in another video. I wanted to finish the Chugokugo Nyumon book I had. So this is a textbook for beginner Chinese and it is in Japanese, and actually I haven't even opened it this year, so this is not reached at all. I wanted to finish HSK1 materials. This is not reached at all. Start HSK2 materials. This is not reached at all. Start conversation lessons. I haven't done that yet. I looked it up, but then I stopped studying the language for the year, so. Read 30 stories on Do Chinese. I have read a lot of stories this year on Do Chinese, so this is completed. Watch native content. Yes, I did complete that. Write a few captions, so in Mandarin Chinese, and I meant on Instagram for my Instagram account, and I did not complete this goal this year. Mandarin Chinese was sort of a half focus for me this year, in the sense that I focused on it for the first part of the year, but then when it got around the last final stretch of preparations for the JLPT exam, I stopped my Mandarin Chinese practice and I actually haven't gone back to it yet. But I'm still, watching some vlogs in Mandarin Chinese here and there, but that's pretty much it. I've stopped actively studying the language for now. I will resume it in 2024. But so during the time I studied it this year, I mostly did daily grammar and vocab, listening and pronunciation exercises on Duolingo, listening practice watching vlogs in Chinese, and reading practice using the app Do Chinese. I did not open a single textbook for Mandarin Chinese this year. And out of the few resources I used this year, in fact, the best one that I also singled out last year, if I'm not wrong, so my best resource for Mandarin Chinese for 2022 and in 2023, and it is the app Do Chinese. This is a reading immersion app. It contains a ton of reading contents, stories that are original to the app. It is interactive. You can click on each word to know its meaning. You can save the words. You can look up grammar explanations. It also contains audio. It is a bit on the pricier side. but personally I know from past experience with Japanese that this kind of interactive reading app is working wonders for me for my language learning, because my main personal goal for language learning is to be able to read in that language. And since I had prior experience in Japanese with the same kind of app, I wanted to find a similar one for Mandarin Chinese. I did find it and I am in love with it. I have the yearly subscription and I don't regret it one bit. I am so glad Do Chinese exists, to be honest. This video is not sponsored by them, and really this is the best resource I have found so far for Mandarin Chinese. Alright, last but not least, we will now talk about Russian. For Russian, I wanted to finish the Duolingo course. I am far from finishing it. I'm not even sure I will continue this in 2024 because, as I said, Duolingo is starting to annoy me a bit. This was not accomplished at all this year. Practice Cyrillic handwriting. I did do a bit of that, but I would say it's only half reached. Start TORFL material. So TORFL is the language proficiency exam for Russian material for A1 level. I did not do that at all. Watch native contents. I did do that a little bit. Russian was my lowest priority this year in terms of language learning, just because I was very advanced for Japanese and I was kind of more advanced with Mandarin Chinese, so I prioritized those two languages. But then just for fun, I really wanted to get into some Russian practice this year, which I did a little bit. And to be fair, even though I haven't studied Russian for a long period of time this year, I still feel like I progressed more this year than I did last year. In broad terms, I am still at a very, very beginner level, but I feel much more comfortable with the language in the sense that it is starting to not sound as foreign as any language does when you start it for the first time. So I'm very happy with that. I do not understand spoken Russian yet. I have, lots of trouble pronouncing it myself. However, I think that recognizing and kind of guessing the meaning of written Russian, it's getting better. Again, reading practice and reading immersion is always the first step for me into progression with a new language, so I'm very happy about that. This year really was the year I got more comfortable with the language, and I hope that next year it will be even more. So how did I study Russian this year? As I said, I didn't do much for Russian this year, but still I continued working my way through the Duolingo Russian course for English speakers, which, to be honest, was a bit of a pain, but I was still happy because it helped me practice my pronunciation for Russian and I learned more vocab this year. I also learned a bit more about the very difficult grammar and conjugation system. I took some notes there as well. I also immersed in the language thanks to YouTube with videos made for language learners. I also found this year my favorite resource so far for learning the language, and this is the Easy Russian podcast. So the 4 main points for me about this podcast are that they have tons of videos available already, so I won't run out of contents for a long time. The subjects are varied and interesting. The creators speak at a natural speed. And last but not least, in my opinion, the biggest point of all, the transcripts for each podcast are available for free on their website. I was looking specifically for this kind of resource, and so when I found it, I was very, very happy. I started studying with it immediately, and it took over my Duolingo course. When it comes to a podcast, of course it is much more difficult to approach, but at the same time you progress much more than with a course like Duolingo. So really, in 2024, I can't wait to study more with it. Alright then, there you have it. That's all the language study I did in 2023. I clearly did not meet my goals, all my language goals for each of my languages this year, but it doesn't matter because I feel extremely satisfied with myself, with the progress I made and the achievements I also reached, and I cannot wait to progress even more next year in each of these languages. If you're curious about my 2024 for language study goals. I will make a video about this very soon, so stay tuned for that. But for now, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video and I will see you in my next one. Bye bye! Mata ne! So the year for me was kind of eventful, so I did what I could. The year for me was there, therefore the year for me was, so therefore the